take a look at the Declaration of Independence and see how Enlightenment thinkers influenced the writings of Thomas Jefferson when he put this all together. So you had an opportunity yesterday to do a lot of research on the different Enlightenment thinkers. You're going to want to have your Cornell Notes page ready. If you haven't done so already, make sure that you put your header in place. You know we have our questions on the left side, general notes on the right side in the larger section, and at the bottom is our synthesis page. And I suggest for lesson writing down some sort of variation of Enlightenment / revolution, however you are best going to be able to locate this information. Now, let's quick review some of the key ideas of our Enlightenment thinkers. So I have already used our SmartShot app so that we have this from our online source. And we're just going to review some of the main ideas real quick so that we know what to focus on in some of the excerpts from the Declaration of Independence. So as a reminder, we did John Locke. Yesterday we talked a little bit about him with our notes for the background and a few ideas we might want to remember. He is firmly believing about self-government, something we may want to also focus on. All humans have same rights, natural rights in particular. Oh, and here we can definitely maybe put a box around life, liberty, and property, since those are also going to come up. We might even want to make a note that in our declaration, this is something completely different. So maybe we want to annotate life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, just as a reminder that we know that this has a connection. And also what we talked about yesterday was another quote that does come up is the idea of all men are created equal. So maybe we want to make a note of the all men are created equal. Okay. It's just a few quick reminders here to help us focus. A few other ones. Purpose of government is to protect people's rights. Governments come from the consent of the people. So a couple of important facts to note there. If we take a look at Jean-Jacques Rousseau, seems to be talking a lot about free will of the people. Noticing that pretty quickly. Let's use a different color for him so that we can really differentiate between the two. Okay. So maybe general will, will of the majority, over individual will. Another connection, government should be formed by the people. That sounds pretty similar to something that John Locke is saying. So we might want to make some sort of connection to that. Maybe even put a little squiggly arrow to note that there is a connection to John Locke. There are some similarities in these ideas. Okay. We take a look at Charles de Montesquieu. One of the phrases that really is popping out at me is separation of power, something that we have in the government over here. Voltaire, we maybe notice that there's the freedom of expression, so that might be something that we want to also focus on. Expression. Cesar Beccaria seems to be focusing a lot on the rights of people when it comes to criminal offenses. So maybe we'll make a note in that box. Let's change the color too. Okay. And Mary Wollstonecraft. kind of starting up the idea of women's rights. So let's make a note of that in her box. So we've started to, remind ourselves what these Enlightenment thinkers are. And again, there are many different Enlightenment thinkers out there. These are just a few of many. So let's take a look now. We'll refer back to this when needed. But let's take a look at our excerpts from the Declaration of Independence and see if we can find connections to these Enlightenment thinkers. So, when in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the governments which have connected them with another, and to gain the rights which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. Behold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government on that shall seem most likely to protect their safety and happiness. So let's see what we can really highlight first. A few items that really did stand out to me. We'll notice that gain the rights which the laws of nature, that sounds pretty similar to some things that John Locke was saying, where we're talking about natural rights. If we go into the second paragraph, we are going to see that life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, which, as we know, John Locke mentioned life, liberty, and property, which we already noted. And there's also the phrase, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, which, as we see here, government's power comes from the consent of the people. So we have a couple of items that we can add into our Cornell notes. So let's, for general notes, we'll write down John Locke, consent of governed in declaration, life, liberty, property, making note that this is in actuality life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Okay. And he's making a lot of references to those natural rights, so that's something else we want to make note of here. And these are all in the first and second paragraphs. So we have a lot of good information here. Let's differentiate some of this a little bit. We'll make this bold and underlined. Okay. I'm going to put the life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness in italic, so we know that there is a change that happened there. Maybe underline first and second paragraph so we know where to look. Now we can think of a question to kind of get us thinking a little further here. I would say, how do John Locke's ideas influence Jefferson when writing the opening of the Declaration of Independence? So we already have a question that is down. We could also make a connection to Rousseau potentially, where he says that the government should be formed by the people and guided by the general will of the society. That does, as we said, sound very similar to John Locke's consent of the people, which is also relevant in the beginning of the Declaration. So why don't we even make a note of that? Okay, so Rousseau Add a little bold aspect to it. Make sure you undo those before you continue typing. Government should be formed by the people, similar to John Locke, what he says. Put a little star so we know this difference. Okay, so now you're going to continue to look at the rest of the sections of the Declaration of Independence, and with your partner, you're going to go through and see if you can connect the other Enlightenment thinkers to these sections here. You're going to do the same thing that we did with the Cornell notes. Write down your general notes, making specific examples of what it is that is said in the Declaration, so you want that full evidence, and creating your own questions as you go along to get yourself thinking. And then in a couple of sentences, you'll summarize what you have found regarding the connection between Enlightenment thinkers and the Declaration of Independence.